Finally finished. Can't wait to test this baby out. Alright, the alpha sound okay. Let's check the stabilizers. Wait a second. No. Fuck! First, let's start off with stabilizer anatomy, just so we can understand what makes up a stabilizer. If we took apart the stabilizer, we'll end up with 5 parts: the wire, 2 stabilizer housings, and 2 stabilizer stems. I also include a spaceport wire, but you will also see other wires of different length depending on the keyboard that you are building. So, what causes stabilizer ticking? The 3 main issues for your stabs ticking are usually 1. The wire is bent. No matter how much lube you use, your stabilizers will always tick if your wires are not straight from the get-go. 2. There's not enough lube in the stem. Depending on the stabilizer, your stem will have more or less tolerance for the wire to slide into. We need to ensure we have enough lube so that there isn't enough space for the wire to hit the stem walls, which causes the ticking sound that we hear. 3. There's not enough lube in the part where the wire clips into the housing. I'll show how we lube that, but this usually isn't the issue for most people. Okay, so in order to balance a stabilizer wire, you'll need 3 things. First, you'll need a flat surface. Here I have a glass back iPhone. This is not perfectly flat, but it'll do the job. We'll have our stabilizer wire that we want to tune or balance, and then we'll have some stabilizer twister tools. So people would have used pen barrels, syringes, pliers, Gion's tool, or you can just get some 3D printed parts like I have here. I'll send the link in the description. So in order to do it, first you'll put your stabilizer wire on your flat surface. Check both sides. So testing this, we can see that the right side is flat. We can hear ticking on the left side. So what we want to do is balance it in such a way that we'll twist the left side downwards and the right side we'll try to keep it in place or twist it upwards so that it'll be balanced and flat. A balanced wire should not have any sound when you're tapping on both sides. So let's go ahead and do that. So here I'm twisting the left side down a little bit and the right side I'm holding in place. I'm testing it out. You can see that the right side is still fine. Still have ticking on the left side, so we'll continue to do that. Testing again. Right side fine. Left side still has a bit of ticking. Again. You can see that the right side is ticking now, and the left side is fine. So that means we twisted the wire too much, that the left side is now flat, and the right side is up. So we'll go ahead and bend the right side back a little bit. Okay, no ticking on the right side. We have a little bit of ticking left on the left side. So we'll go ahead and twist that back. Testing it out. Alright, more on the right side, none on the left. So bent a little bit too much. We'll go ahead and readjust a little bit. Okay, no ticking. A little bit of ticking. Okay, now let's test it. Right side good. Left side a little bit of ticking. Okay, right side good. Left side almost good. Go ahead and bend that back a little bit more. Right side good, left side good. So now what you want to do to test is you want to hold down one side, just barely, and then push on the other side. If there's any ticking, probably not good. And we'll test the other side now. No ticking. So we can see here that it does take a little bit of practice and maneuvering to see if you can get it done right. But with practice, you'll get a lot faster at doing this. In order to lube our stabilizers, we'll need a few lubes. I'd recommend Krytox 205G0 or a thinner grease such as Tribosis 3203 or 3204 for the housing and stem, and then a thicker grease such as HXTBDZ or even 207G2 from Krytox for the wire. Dielectric grease can be used, although I won't be using it for this video. In my demonstration, I am lubing cherry clip-in stabilizers. These stems have additional nubs on two of the legs that will need to be clipped prior to lubing. If these are not clipped, there will be additional inconsistencies when pressing the key, as the legs will touch the PCB at times in normal usage. We can clip these off with flush cutters. If you have them, or even nail cutters will work. Note that other stabilizers won't have these legs to clip unless you're working with cherry clones, or even older GMK stabilizers. Using 205G0, we'll want to lube the inside of our housings as well as the outside of our stems to eliminate any friction from plastic on plastic contact. Just like lubing your switches, ensure that you have a thin coat of 205G0 applied on the surfaces. Once we're done lubing our stems, what we'll want to do next is fill in the space where the wire slots into the stem. This is a much cleaner method as opposed to plugging the butt. The reason why we're doing this is to eliminate the ticking issue from contact between the wire and the stem. We'll take a glob of lube on our brush and fill the hole. You don't need a ton of lube, just enough to ensure that we'll fill the space between the slot and the wire once the wire is pushed in. You'll get a feel for how much lube you'll need the more stabilizers you tune. After the stem is prepped, we'll insert the stem back into the housing. Ensure the side with two holes is facing the same side as the housing with the hole for the wire. Most stabilizers will have two holes on the side. In the event that yours doesn't, make sure the angle side is facing the side of the housing that doesn't have a hole to put the wire through. Let's go ahead and lube the wire now. Remember that you'll want to use a thicker lube. This will reduce the chance that your stabilizers will tick after you're done tuning. There are some special cases where it is better to use a thinner lube instead. I'll leave that in my ending remarks. Be aware of this though if you're using TX, Stabies, or OWL stabilizers. When using BDZ, you'll want a fairly thin layer to coat the wire just so you don't see any bare part of the wire. Ensure that you lube the elbow portion of the wire as well. I'll show how mine looks in just a bit. Now that our wire is lubed, go ahead and insert the wire into the stabilizer housing, and repeat for the other side. After we're done with that, we can go on to testing our stabilizer tuning job. Once your stabilizer is lubed, it's now time to test it. In order to test it, I'd recommend having a PCB, a lubed linear switch, and a keycap. A linear switch will make it easier to tell if your stabilizer is lubed correctly or not. First, align the hook of your stabilizer to the bigger hole for your stabilizer cutout. The clip-in or screw-in portion aligns with the smaller hole. This PCB switch cutouts are too loose, so I'll have to hold my switch in place when testing. We'll start off by lightly tapping all four corners, and then we'll tap the keycap quite hard to see if we can hear any ticking. If that's all good, the best way to tell if you have tick is to press the keycap down halfway and then tap the corners to see if you can hear any ticking. Keep in mind that the loop will settle as you tap, so ensure you test a good amount before building your keyboard. If your stabilizers are still ticking after you've looped them, you'll want to do one of two things. The first thing to do is called plugging the butt. Lift the stabilizer stem up and then syringe or brush lube, usually 205G0, into where the slot is for the wire. You'll want to fill up the space between the wire and the slot. The second thing to do is to take the stabilizer out and then flip it over so you can expose the wire in the stem slot. Take some lube and brush or syringe it into the cranny between the wire and the stem slot. Try to do it from both ends of the stem. The idea is to fill up any holes or gaps between the slot and the wire so that the wire won't hit the stabilizer stem wall and cause the ticking noise when you are lifting the stabilizer up. I want to reiterate that this is what I do to tune my stabilizers. There are a lot of different modifications you can do if you are struggling, but I find them to be a waste of time. Once you have enough practice looping stabilizers, it will get a lot easier. The bottom line to understand is, if you want to eliminate tick, you'll need to straighten your stabilizer wires and fill the gap between the slot of the stem and wire so that the wire can only slide along the slot instead of bumping into it because of the extra space. Something to note is that the stabilizers with less tolerances between the wire and the stem slot, like OWL stabs, stabies, and TX stabs, you'll want to use less BDZ or even just 205G0 for the wire. I've experienced slow presses and returns with thicker lubes. You do not need to use a lot of BDZ or thicker lube in order to tune your stabilizers correctly. Take your time and thoroughly test your tuning. It's much more of a hassle to tune your stabilizers once your keyboard is assembled. Thank you for watching, and please feel free to leave a comment if you have any additional questions.